Welcome neighbors to another episode. We're going to be talking today about cards you should be picking up from the D-BT07 set, Raging Flames Against Emerald Storm set. It's going to be awesome. Hopefully you'll be sticking around long enough for this. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. You guys know what to do already. So first things first, we'll be going this nation by nation, and we possibly might be also adding in some honorable mentions. So without further ado, let's get into it. So one of the first cards that we're going to be talking about is Flare Cannon Equip Balverina. The box topper card, the card that's on the box art with Yu in the background, displaying all of his prowess, is the grade new Cross Overdress unit from set 7, which enables them to get an extra drive check. So they have triple drive technically in their archetype, does tend to use a whole lot of counterblast, so hopefully in the future we'll be getting some counter charge. This is one of the newest units, and you do want to probably pick this up to strengthen your Nirvana Yeva package. Then we have another card coming up as well, Meteor Flare Dragon. I would call this a more of an honorable mentions sort of deal, because it does remove the continuous abilities from your opponents, and you cannot gain any continuous abilities as long as this has been placed for the turn. And you can also clear out some of your opponent's cards, which is kind of nice. I feel that this does have more premium applications, especially into like other archetypes that have a whole bunch of protection effects sometimes placed on them. It's kind of nice to have this. The Prayer Dragons, you're going to want to pick these up. Just standard, doesn't really matter which they are. All of them are relatively cheap right now, so if you just pick up all of them, it should save you on a bunch of issues, and you possibly might need them in the future as well. They help give you extra variation on what your attack plans are. There's a couple that allows you to retire your opponent's cards, like the new one of the Break Crypt Dragon Brago, which is okay. And we also happen to have the Assault Bullet of Dust Oswald, which does happen to give Eugene some restanding capabilities and possibly applications for premium. Who knows? That'd be really nice. You can play in premium Eugene. Sadly enough, we don't have discard Eugene anymore, so you can't really make it work for that at the moment. But hey, it does give Eugene a way of being able to have some better legs to stand on in both formats, standard and in premium. So this is really, really, really welcome, to say the least. And now we move on to Dark States. A lot more cards in Dark States, a lot more applicable because they have a lot better support for varying formats for premium and for standard. So let's go. First, we do have Heat Haze Acrobat Miroslava. She's really good in Drajult. I don't know if you'd probably want to play her in anything other than Drajult, since her skill is placed from hand. Sadly enough, so now placed from soul, you do not gotta apply your skill of being able to get a card back from your hand and also retiring something from your opponent, which could be pretty slick in certain situations. But it's not bad, to say the least, to still want to get back cards you might be wanting to use, and also getting extra power as a bonus, which could be great. Then of course, the namesake Drajult. If you want to go and play Drajult, be sure to pick this up. This is pretty important. You're gonna need this. You can still keep on playing the trial deck version of it, but this allows you to soul charge extra cards, and if you happen to have Swirler, it allows you to do a whole lot more with this, and it does just pressure your opponent a little bit more. Then we have Demonic Stone Dragon, the Gargoyle boy himself, Rockagore, which does allow you to restand and gain power. Gains plus 10 when it attacks a grade 3 or greater unit. If your soul has 4 or more cards with different grades, this gets plus 10. It's once per turn proc, but it does become a 30k unit when your opponent is on their grade 3 and you did happen to Persona Ride, which is still pretty slick. Does not stack. Whew, thankfully, that would be relatively scary, but you do still get a restanding rear guard, which does give you a capability of doing, 4 attacks or 5 attacks if you happen to have 2 copies of them. But you do happen to use a little bit of CB in Drajult, so you'll have to be a little bit careful about how you want to use your resources. I would still say 4 attacks is still better than nothing. Still better than 3. And every little incremental value that you can gain, be sure to always keep on thinking about how you want to use your resources when using this card. It's very straightforward, not much to say here other than it's a very good card. You might want to pick this up, especially a playset. Now some other cards here. We do have Lilac Lasher, Bar Magnus support. You know, 7 sets. We're BT07, baby. D-BT07, let's go. It gets +2 for every card in your soul. It's very straightforward, very simple, but combine it with Bar Magnus. It's a 12k attacker base, plus the extra 2k it gets for every soul that you have. 15 makes it 32, 42k power. I think that's pretty okay. 42k rare card without much needed on it, and it still stays at around 30k power when it's going to be attacking, because it procs every single time it attacks. So it's until end of battle, which is still pretty good. I see some builds in OCG usually used to play this at 1 or 2 copies. I don't see there's a reason much to change that right now. Getting to the 15 soul is relatively easy for Bar Magnus these days. It also has some extra support that it's gotten in recent memory, and now having an extra beat stick that it can use, so you don't have to use cards like Deep Sonicer as much. Swirler is still kind of important in archetype, but with this being as one of its prominent beaters, you can actually play a budgetary version of a Bar Magnus without having to play it or commit swirlers to it. You don't have to play swirlers, it just enhances the potential of you closing out a game. And this adds a ceiling to the deck that a lot of people are going to be very, very scared with dealing. Now, one of my favorite cards in this whole entire expansion, you would probably think, oh, it's probably something from Dragon Empire, or probably something from Keta for Hexor, but no, it is Falcate Performer. I like this card so much. It's a very tricky ability. It only soul charges a card that you don't have in soul, but one of the prominent grades that you possibly could not have in your soul is a grade 4. So there are some Jejuled variants that did play some grade 4 boosts in their lists, and so that could be one of the grades that you can end up soul blasting a whole lot. And with Falcate, since that's very rare to happen, you'll have an extra copy of a grade 4 in your soul, you'll just soul charge. You just soul charge it. Again, out of your drop zone. You target a card from your drop zone, and this has premium applications as well, because of the Nightmareland stand trigger that happens to proc whenever it goes into soul. It doesn't say from where, so you can soul charge it from your drop if you probably soul blasted your starter at some point in the game, and you can just soul charge it and choose some extra resources with just boosting. You could probably do something like this in Harry, so Harry has a really good booster right now. I don't know if I'll put it like to the top, the highest echelons, but it's a really good card. You probably want to pick this up. At least a playset. It's relatively cheap at the moment. I think it's like $4, $3-4. So it's alright. And now, a card you probably wouldn't expect me talking about is Ristle Galar. It is a rare card from the set. It has a bit of retire. You could possibly play this instead of Miroslava. Revitalizes a lot of extra resources, especially if you have a bunch of like orders in your hand. If you happen to be playing a variant that uses a bit of orders, this allows you to reuse them as pieces for your soul, which is great. It's awesome. So definitely pick up a playset. It's very cheap, very inexpensive. And now on to an order that you're probably going to want to be picking up. It's so good. So for the longest time, we were running the other grade 3 order that belongs to Brutes, right? And now we have a very specific Bar Magnus order that does give you 1 less soul, but the compensation that you get for it is immeasurable. Finally, a card for Bar Magnus that allows him to do this. So Gun Blast 1, you soul charge 3, then you choose your Vanguard, and then for this whole turn, so if you have something like a Selfish Engraver on board or any of your grade 2s that you're using, you can actually hit the Vanguard now without having to be persona ridden. So you can actually play Bar Magnus with maybe just 1 grade 3. Since you have a constant persona ride, or maybe just 1 extra Bar Magnus, you're not limited now to the confines of having to run more persona rides to get the extra power because of this order. This is magnificent. This is great. This is something that we've needed, and I'm very happy that Magnus has gotten it. It gives plus 5k if you have 10 cards in your soul. So good. Selfish Engraver, poking for 15. All your other rear guards, poking for 15, poking for 13. Hitting over your opponent's defensive situations that they have. Maybe if you're probably Persona Raiden, hits for 25, they hit the defensive trigger, your rear guard still hits. And you still force shield out of your opponent's hand, and your Vanguard's also swinging for 28, especially if you got your 15 in soul. So hey, 28k double crit, and your rear guards are coming out with extra 10k. Whew. It's very hard to keep up with, to say the least. So make sure pick this up when you have time to. It's a common. It's such a good common. Last and certainly not least, our boy Baron Magnus going at it again. At the end of battle, your Vanguard attacked with Baron Magnus at his time. And last and certainly not least, another common from set 7 for Dark States for Baron Magnus. Whew. Another support card that for sure you're probably going to want to be using is when your Baron Magnus attacks, Counterblast 2, it's pretty hefty of a cost, but come on. Selfish Engravers, you're fine. Choose 10 cards from your soul, return all other cards to the deck, so you can actually choose triggers. We have a card that can send back triggers now. There's sometimes you have moments where you're soul charging so much, especially with swirlers, especially with the Desire Doll that makes you soul charge extra, that you can oftentimes be close to 20 cards in soul, 30 cards in soul at times. And this allows you to send back those cards while also pressuring your opponent's hand. Whew! Spicy! Because you can always call it out your soul after, especially if you want to keep yourself from decking out. It's really good. I'm gonna keep on gushing about this card. It has so many applications. And now we are here in Brandgate. It's a Blitz CEO stuff. Pick it up. I have nothing really else to say. I don't think there's really any extra support. I think maybe some Gravidia support. That's not that good, sadly enough. You still just want to try use some of your old things. Nothing really for Orphis. Nothing really for Prison either. Nothing really. Sadly enough. It's just all CEO stuff. So just if you want to play this deck, it's pretty cool. Uses an order system that actually attacks you, which is very unique. It also bounces your cards back to your hand, allowing you to reuse some on places, which is very, very unique to an archetype. So if you want to play something new, interesting, and low commitment, because the archetype is relatively cheap. Nobody really sees it doing too well right now, especially with a lot lacking extra draw, extra effects, and ways of being able to activate your orders on time. Like operating your orders is a little tricky, you know, especially without the correct cards to do so outside of your grade 3 turn. It's a little tough, but it can clear your opponent's board and reduce their power. So, you know, there can be some pretty scary turns, especially if you're Persona Raiden, you're attacking for, 20 to their 3. For example, while multi-operating, especially if they don't have any units to clear out. If they're playing an archetype that doesn't really have a whole bunch of rear guards, you have something to do. And now on to Keter Sanctuary. We're almost done, guys. Don't go anywhere. We still have a couple more cards to talk about. I think the only 3 cards that I would like to mention right now at the moment will have to be Youthberg Well-Formed Tempest, Wayward Therapy Angel, and Witch of Accumulation Sequenia. Youthberg obviously draws cards, remove cards from your opponent, and also having extra power that your opponent needs to deal with. So good. Such a good card. Such a good card for an archetype that we'll see whether or not it'll be the best deck in the format. Western players does tend to have a habit of playing different archetypes. What they believe is good, then what is objectively good is completely, it's a non-argument. It doesn't matter to them. Loyalists will play whatever they want to. And then we have Wayward Therapy Angel. When this is discarded, it gets called to the back row, and you can use it as a 10k booster or 10k attacker, which is awesome. It's just static 10k, and having your opponent to deal with a 23k attack lane on your Vanguard column is annoying to deal with, because you can never use 15k shield to block it. It always has to be a 2 to pass or no guard. Always has to be. Or perfect guard or no guard. Can't do it any other way. And then we have the whichever accumulation, which is also another 10k booster and also gives your rebel forms drive checks. So your Zest can get one if you're still running Zest for some odd reason. Your Gust actually becomes twin drive, but your timing needs to be immaculate on that. Because don't forget, Youthberg minuses your drive check to 2, minus 2 drives, and this gives you a drive, a single drive back. It resets it to 1. And then Gust gives it +1, so you can actually have a twin drive, which is kind of tasty, not gonna lie. So you tend to draw through your deck a whole lot with this archetype, and you only have 4 chances of getting the doing twin drives or getting just like 1 extra drive to draw an extra card. So you're drawing a whole lot through your deck. So I don't really see you running a lot of draws in this. Maybe out the gate, maybe at the beginning. Your hand might be a bit low, especially being pressured by a very aggressive deck. You might still want to run draws, but I can see yourself decking out like relatively easy with this archetype. So you might want to be careful. Be very, very careful. So I would say, still go with fronts. You know, still run fronts. I feel that those are still pretty good. You don't have to worry about soul, because half the archetype, the cards just go into soul. Or they only use like 1 soul at a time at any given point. So you don't have to worry too much about soul at all. And I think that'll have to be it for Keter. I mean, there is some, you know, Divine Sister support that you could probably use for Hexorb. There's also some support that you can use for Bastion as well, which is the Unrivaled Blade, which does just allow you to hit and has a bit of guard restrict, which is awesome. So you could possibly talk about this one. I don't know if we'll be running it because it does use a bit of CB, but then again, Bastion does not use that much CB whatsoever, so I can see you using this card to push some extra advantage. You can run any number of copies of it. It is a triple rare, of course, but I don't expect it to be that expensive. Probably $5, $4 maybe. I don't see that much. The chaser card right now to the set for sure is Youthberg Tempest, so you might want to pick this up when you can. Now, welcome to Stoichia, where we have the biggest brains to make some decks work here. But first things first to mention, we do have some Sylvan Beast support. So Magnolia, back in action. We do have Inlet Pulse back, so I don't know how a lot of these cards are going to be that relevant. We'll see how much Inlet Pulse is going to be making the rounds. That's also going to be a respectively chaser card, so if you happen to have a playset of it, Papa bless on you, because it's gonna be different. It's gonna be difficult for the rest of us, you know. Especially for people who want to be playing Flagberg. There's also Maelstrom that happens to be running Tear Dragons, and Inlet Pulse is gonna be very important for you to pick up. Whew, it's gonna be tough, to say the least. But you know, outside of that, we're here to talk about some of the support cards that came out. We do have the Resonance Dragon. Of course, it allows you to get a 4th attack on a rear guard. Of course, you're going to be running this card, playset, run it. Come on, it's insane. Then we also have the Sylvan Beast Alpin. It gives you power, it gives you counter charge, it gives you soul charge as well, because there's sometimes when you rewrite Magnolia, you want to call a card from out of your soul to get an extra beater, and especially if you're playing against an archetype that happens to clear your board a whole lot, you might want to do something about this. And you also have it really well protected against Spiritual Body Condensation because it binds itself, you know, to keep you from abusing it. Because they know a lot of people are running Spiritual Body or Sweet Dreams Nightmare, the other grade 1 order. And there's also the new Tier Knight, which does actually get power on its own. So you could possibly see this as a replacement for Ascendance Assault. But I'm not sure you'd want to. I would see this being ran alongside Ascendance Assault. Definitely not over Inlet Pulse, but it gives you potential of being able to unlock more attack patterns with this, which is great because it can attack itself, it restands, +5, it's really good. And then we have the Serral, which allows you to search for a grade 3 Magnolia. It's pretty good. Or you can search for a card with Magnolia. So you can search for your Persona Ride, or you can search for Magnolia Elder. That's completely entirely up to you. It's a good card. You want to run it. I could see you run old Magnolia again if you want to. And there is also the fact that if you Persona Ride this turn, your backer will also get Persona Ride power. You know, I can see it. I can see this be really good into a lot of matchups, and also a lot of pressure that you'll be able to pump out to your opponent. And that's it for D-BT07 and cards that you should be looking out for and picking up for archetypes that you might be interested in, or cards that you want to be using to revitalize your archetypes that you're already playing. This is awesome. This has been great. Hopefully you enjoyed this. It's been your boy JJ, and until next time, so long and take care.
I love you in other words.